Assalamu Alaikum and welcome to our channel. In this video, we will discuss the life and legacy of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The life of the Prophet, peace be upon him, is a fascinating story that has captivated hearts and minds for centuries. We will take a journey through the events that shaped his life, and we will seek to understand the impact of his legacy on our lives today. The story of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is one of the most fascinating stories in human history. It's a story of perseverance, devotion, and selflessness, and it begins in the city of Mecca, in the year 570 CE. The Prophet was born into a society plagued by idol worship and tribal warfare. His parents passed away when he was a child, and he was raised by his grandfather and then his uncle. As a young man, he was known for his honesty and integrity. He was also known for his deep contemplation and reflection, often retreating to the mountains to meditate and reflect on the mysteries of life. But as he grew older, he became increasingly perplexed by the state of his society. Mecca was a city plagued by idol worship and tribal warfare. The Prophet longed for a deeper understanding of his purpose in life and the nature of the universe. He felt a sense of disconnection from the world around him and began to wonder if there was more to life than what he could see. One day, while meditating in the mountains, the Prophet, peace be upon him, met Jibreel, peace be upon him. He saw the Archangel Jibreel, peace be upon him, who revealed to him the first verses of the Quran. This experience was a turning point in the Prophet's life. He began to preach the message of monotheism and the oneness of God to the people of Mecca, urging them to abandon their idols and turn to the worship of the one true God. But the people of Mecca were not receptive to the Prophet's message. They ridiculed and persecuted him, calling him a madman and a liar. The Prophet was forced to flee Mecca and seek refuge in the city of Medina. Despite the persecution and the challenges he faced, the Prophet remained steadfast in his mission. He continued to spread the message of Islam and worked tirelessly to build a community of believers who would live according to the principles of Islam. Through his leadership and example, the Prophet transformed the Arabian Peninsula, uniting the tribes and establishing a society based on justice and compassion. His legacy continues to this day, inspiring millions of people around the world to live according to the principles of Islam and to strive for a better world. After receiving the revelation in the cave, the Prophet, peace be upon him, was initially perplexed and frightened. He returned home to his wife, Khadija, seeking comfort and support. It was Khadija who recognized the divine nature of the revelation and supported the Prophet, peace be upon him, in his mission. As the Prophet, peace be upon him, began to share the message of Islam, he faced intense opposition from the Meccan society, who were deeply invested in their polytheistic beliefs and way of life. The Prophet, peace be upon him, and his followers endured years of persecution and harassment, but they remained steadfast in their faith and continued to spread the message of Islam. Despite facing immense challenges, the Prophet, peace be upon him, remained committed to his mission of spreading the message of Islam. He continued to receive revelations from Allah, which he compiled into the Holy Book of Islam, the Quran. The Quran contains guidance on every aspect of life, from personal ethics and morality to social and political systems. The Prophet, peace be upon him, also established a community of believers, which became the foundation of the Islamic faith. He taught his followers to live with compassion, justice, and respect for all people, regardless of their background or beliefs. Through his example, the Prophet, peace be upon him, demonstrated the importance of humility, generosity, and selflessness. In the face of persecution and adversity, the Prophet, peace be upon him, remained unwavering in his commitment to spreading the message of Islam. His legacy continues to inspire and guide millions of Muslims around the world, who strive to follow in his footsteps and live a life of compassion, justice, and service to humanity. The Prophet's, peace be upon him, message of monotheism, compassion, and justice challenged the social norms of Mecca. The society was deeply rooted in idol worship and tribalism, and the Prophet's message of equality and justice threatened the power dynamics that had existed for centuries. The leaders of Mecca saw the Prophet, peace be upon him, as a threat and began to launch a campaign of persecution against him and his followers. The Prophet, peace be upon him, and his small group of believers were constantly harassed, threatened, and even physically assaulted. The situation became so dire that the Prophet, peace be upon him, had to flee Mecca and seek refuge in the city of Medina. This moment of escape and exile was a burstiness in the Prophet's life. He had to leave behind his home, his family, and his community to start a new life in a new city. But even in Medina, the Prophet's life was full of tension and suspense. He was constantly under threat from his enemies, who sought to destroy him and his message. However, despite the constant danger, the Prophet, peace be upon him, continued to spread his message of compassion and justice, and slowly but surely, he gained a following. As his influence grew, the Prophet, peace be upon him, became a leader not only in the religious sense, but also in the political and social sense. He established a constitution that laid out the principles of justice and equality, and he worked to unite the tribes of Medina into a cohesive community. The Prophet's, peace be upon him, unwavering commitment to his message of compassion and justice, despite the constant threat to his life, is a testament to his strength and perseverance. His legacy continues to inspire millions of people around the world to this day. The Prophet, peace be upon him, was leaving behind everything he had ever known, but he was also embarking on a new journey that would change the course of history. After the Prophet, peace be upon him, arrived in Medina, he was greeted with open arms by the residents who were eagerly waiting for his arrival. The city was going through a lot of conflict and instability, and the people were hopeful that the Prophet's, peace be upon him, leadership would bring peace and prosperity to their lives. The Prophet, peace be upon him, wasted no time in establishing a strong foundation for the Muslim community in Medina. He formed alliances with various tribes and established a constitution, known as the Constitution of Medina, that recognized the rights of all citizens, regardless of their religion or background. This was a revolutionary concept that had not been seen before in Arabia. Despite the progress, the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his followers were still under constant threat from their enemies. The Quraysh, the powerful tribe that had expelled the Prophet, peace be upon him, from Mecca, saw the growth of the Muslim community in Medina as a threat to their power and status. They launched a series of attacks against the Muslims, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, had to constantly be on guard to protect his people. But the Prophet, peace be upon him, never wavered in his commitment to spreading the message of Islam. He continued to teach and preach, and slowly but surely, more and more people began to embrace the faith. The Muslim community grew in strength and numbers, and it was clear that the Prophet's, peace be upon him, message was resonating with people. However, the situation was far from stable. The Prophet, peace be upon him, and his followers were still under constant threat, and the future was uncertain. This created a sense of suspense that hung over the community, as they never knew what would happen next. Despite the challenges, the Prophet, peace be upon him, remained steadfast in his mission. He continued to work tirelessly to establish a society based on justice, compassion, and equality, and his message continued to spread far and wide. And in the end, it was this message that would change the course of history forever. The Prophet, peace be upon him, spent the rest of his life spreading the message of Islam, and his community in Medina continued to grow and thrive. He made significant changes to the social, economic, and political systems of his community, emphasizing the principles of justice, equality, and compassion. He established treaties and alliances with neighboring tribes, and his message began to spread beyond Medina. But his enemies were never far away. There were numerous battles and skirmishes between the Muslim community and their enemies, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, was often on the front lines, leading his followers into battle. These were moments of both burstiness and suspense, as the outcome of each battle was uncertain. Despite the challenges, the Prophet, peace be upon him, remained steadfast in his mission. He preached patience, perseverance, and forgiveness, even in the face of great adversity. His teachings inspired countless people, both during his lifetime and after his death. When the Prophet, peace be upon him, passed away in 632 CE, he left behind a legacy that would continue to shape the course of history. His teachings and example inspired countless people to follow in his footsteps, and his message of compassion, justice, and monotheism continues to resonate to this day. The Prophet's legacy has been preserved through the Quran, the holy book of Islam, as well as through the Hadith, which are the sayings and actions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, that were recorded by his companions. Islamic scholars have spent centuries studying and interpreting the Quran and the Hadith, seeking to understand and apply the teachings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, to modern life. And so, we come to the end of our journey through the life and legacy of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. As time passed, Muhammad's message gained more followers, but it also faced more opposition. The powerful tribes of Mecca, who benefited from the idol worship that took place at the Kaaba, saw Muhammad's teachings as a threat to their wealth and status. The situation reached a boiling point, and the Quraysh tribe, along with other enemies of Islam, waged a fierce war against the small Muslim community. It was during this time that the Battle of Uhud took place, where the Muslims suffered heavy losses and even Muhammad himself was injured. Despite these challenges, the message of Islam continued to spread. Muhammad's patience, perseverance, and unwavering faith in God inspired his followers to keep going despite the obstacles in their path. Finally, after years of persecution and struggle, the tide began to turn in favor of the Muslims. In 630 CE, Muhammad and his followers were able to enter Mecca and conquer it peacefully, with no bloodshed. But Muhammad's legacy did not end with his conquest of Mecca. He continued to spread the message of Islam and build a community of believers until his death in 632 CE. In the years that followed, the early Muslim community faced many challenges and underwent significant changes. But the legacy of Muhammad's teachings and his example of patience, compassion, and dedication to God continued to inspire generations of Muslims to come. As we reflect on the life and legacy of the Prophet Muhammad, we are reminded of the power of faith, perseverance, and a deep connection to God. We can all learn from his example and strive to live our lives with the same level of devotion and dedication to the higher purpose of serving our Creator.